Well, there are different petitions, and generally, if you can avoid having to go through a labor certification, which is a very onerous process, you do in the employment-based world. And so for the people who are not just extraordinary in their own minds, but extraordinary on paper with documents, we can petition for them if they meet, let's say, 3 out of 10 of the criteria. But it's pretty high level. You have to have a very prestigious national or international award, or 3 of the 10 criteria, which can be articles about you, articles about your work, experts who say that you're at the very top of your field. And a lot of it will depend on how narrowly you're going to define what is your field of extraordinary ability. But like the best case is you have a client who's on the cover of Time magazine and has an article written about him or her. Well, that doesn't really happen, and that's where lawyer and advocacy comes in, is we sit down and really drill down to try to figure out how many of the criteria can you meet, how many can you document, how can we creatively go about documenting when the rules are somewhat old-fashioned and we live in a digital world and evidence comes in lots of different forms now, and really translating that. So I view these petitions lots of times about marketing. You're trying to persuade the immigration officer that your client really has risen to the very top of their field, and here are the documents that prove that. So that's extraordinary ability. Then you might have outstanding researcher. So somebody who has a research background, the PhD, is working in a company or a university doing research, and their work has also been recognized, written about, cited frequently. These petitions are about this big. They're, hundreds and hundreds of pages of their work, of people writing about their work, of people saying how fabulous they are. And sometimes in academics, people are very modest, and we have to actually work with them and say, look, you cannot be that modest. You need to tell us about how great you really are. And this looks really interesting, what you've done. Who has spoken to this? How have they spoken to this? So we do those, and we also do national interest waiver. So if somebody has a certain level of education and expertise, and it would be in the national interest for them to be able to escape from having to test the labor market because their credentials are significantly in the balance, worth it to forego protecting the U.S. worker because we want this extraordinary person who is going to be performing work, let's say AIDS research in the national interest, then we can get that kind of petition. But they're big petitions. They take a long time. It takes a lot of collaboration with the client and creativity.